So in past videos, I've spoken about the ways that political polarization damages relationships and reduces constructive dialogue, making it harder to manage and harder to resolve conflict. Today, I'm going to take a look at some of the costs polarization has outside of just conflict resolution or relationships. I'm going to review 4 costs of political polarization to the future of the United States and to our country's ability to survive in this tumultuous and conflict-ridden world. Okay, so what is so wrong about political polarization anyway? Today, I'm going to review 4 costs of polarization to the future of the United States. So the first one is that major issues where substantial agreement exists among most U.S. citizens ends up going unresolved or unaddressed. Okay, so if you think about some of the most consequential issues facing our country, think about the situation on the border with respect to immigration. Think about the ongoing issues around mass shootings and guns. Think about the consequences of climate change. Just these 3 issues. Because of polarization, many Americans think that somehow we are hopelessly divided, that there is no Venn diagram of overlap between Americans on these issues. But if you actually look at the polling, that is just untrue. In fact, there are substantial areas of agreement on immigration, on guns, and on climate. And when I say substantial, I mean well over 50% of the people could agree, at least in some domains, on common sense solutions to these issues. But part of the reason why we can get no actual agreement out of our legislators is because of polarization. So polarization has forced our leaders to take extreme views on these issues. And the extreme views has made it impossible for these leaders to even admit that the other side might have a scintilla of validity to their argument. And so even though we might be able to actually address these issues, we end up deadlocked. And the deadlock has serious costs. In the meantime, our climate gets worse. In the meantime, gun violence continues. In the meantime, we end up with a near cataclysmic border crisis. And so the more polarized we are, the harder it is to actually get agreement where consensus actually exists. So a second cost of political polarization is a threat to our national cohesion. You know, when Barack Obama ran for president the first time, he said, there are no red states and no blue states. There are only the United States of America. And at some level, I hope that most Americans believe that. But now I think there's more and more when we hear that, there's a little bit of an internal eye roll. And that threat to national cohesion is a serious one, and it affects our national security. It makes it easier to divide us from within. So for example, right, we know that our enemies like China and Russia have spent millions of dollars and have used very sophisticated technology to launch disinformation campaigns in the United States. These disinformation campaigns only have resonance because we are so divided, because the level of trust between liberals and conservatives, between Democrats and Republicans, is so high, and it's harder to find that national cohesion, that sense of connection, that idea that if we're united, we are stronger than if we're divided. And so the easier it is to divide us from within, the weaker we become as a nation. A 2021 CBS News poll ranked as the #1 threat to U.S. security other Americans. Not terrorism, not nuclear weapons, not Russia, not China, not North Korean, other Americans. A third serious cost of increasing polarization in the United States is as an increased likelihood of political violence within our borders. Actually, it's not just an increased likelihood. We have actually seen political violence within the United States at levels that we have not seen since the Civil War. For example, the January 6th insurrection, or an increase in politically motivated and extremist mass shootings. But we also see these threats which are outside the bounds of what's acceptable. When the Supreme Court announced its decision in the Dobbs case, it is understandable that many Americans were not happy seeing Roe v. Wade overturned. At the same time, the fact that that resulted in actual threats against certain justices like Alito and Kavanaugh is not okay in a democracy. Similarly, there may be many Americans who did not agree with Congressman Adam Kinzinger when he stood up against fellow Republicans and sat on the January 6th Commission. But threats against him and his son and his wife are not acceptable in a democracy. When the presiding judge in the criminal case against President Trump has threats against his life, that is not acceptable in a democracy. But the more divided and polarized we become, the more we will see this kind of political threat and actual violence happen in our country. The fourth and last cost of political polarization is that we miss the call to become the best version of who we can be as Americans. Our historic reputation in the world, one that we have not always lived up to, but the reputation has been that we are a country of opportunity, a country of individual liberty, a country that could take in people from different cultures who were escaping oppression, lack of freedoms, and that we could promise a better life. And those opportunities still exist in this country. But the more time we spend fighting with each other, the more time we spend over-focusing on the areas where we disagree, we are missing opportunities to create value, to be the kind of people that we say we are and that we want to be. And if we can't get that right, then we will not have a strategic future for ourselves as a country. And so I know this is really grim, but the thing is, I'm doing this video because there are some things you can do to turn us on a better course. And I want to offer two of them right now. First, work hard to make connections outside of your own political bubble. Maybe you live in a neighborhood that is full of President Trump supporters. Or like me, you live in an uber progressive place where literally it seems no one supported Trump. Wherever you are, working to make connections outside of your bubble, to understand better the viewpoints and stories of your fellow Americans, will, I know without a doubt, help you find more shared common ground and less difference, less polarization. So, related to this, sometimes it helps to join a civic group where you will meet different people unlike you. Sometimes it's travel. Travel to places where people have different views or are from different cultures or different socioeconomic backgrounds. A third way to do this is just read outside of your bubble. Pick up a publication that you wouldn't ordinarily look at, or maybe look at a news station that comes from the opposite political view of your own. Second, and this is important, is do your part to avoid adding fuel to the fire. So what does that mean? Well, on social media, it could be really easy to take the most extreme view. More extreme views tend to garner more clicks and more likes and more retweets. But I want to invite you to do something different. Don't retweet, don't click like. And if you're going to say something more moderate. Say something that might actually persuade someone on the other side that you have something of value to say. Also, when you see a friend of yours or a colleague say something that you strongly disagree with, consider inviting a difficult conversation with them about it. Don't just stay silent or give the opposite viewpoint, but really lean in, try to listen, and try to have a difficult conversation. So for more on the effects of political polarization, watch this next video on how political polarization leads to gridlock in Congress. And before you go, please subscribe to my channel, click like, and ring the bell so that you don't miss any new content. Okay, keep watching. Don't stay polarized.